And welcome to another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. It is good to be back. It's the 20th day of March 2016. My name is Doug Owen. I am your host. I have been away last week. We had time change here in the U.S., daylight savings time. So we went ahead and sprung forward, and that's always challenging for this show. We do it live, 9 p.m. Central Standard Time. And you can go to blacklistedradio.com. That's the website dedicated to the show. We have an interactive chat room there, and we have lots of accoutrements. We have Ken back there in the studio, so you can give him a call, 800-313-9443, and we'd love to hear from you. Boy, oh boy, the world has gotten so much weirder than it was just a few days ago. I was chomping at the bit last week to get on the show, but really sitting back and having 2 weeks to look at all of the coverage and mind control that is happening in the media in the 2016 presidential race is phenomenal. It is must-see TV on every level. So we also have some interesting geopolitical things happening. You have Russia now pulling out of Syria, sort of, not really, leaving behind some anti-aircraft and missile defense systems. But for the most part, they've had their George Bush moment, mission accomplished. A lot of political wonks and those in the commentary arena when it comes to geopolitical policy saw Syria as an opportunity for Russia to force the West to deal with Russia. And, after 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 months, you end up with a quagmire. You end up with Iraq. You end up with ISIS. You end up with U.S. assets, trained, militarized Syrian fighters that are, fighting between agencies in the DIA and the CIA. So you have the situation in Turkey. So there's a lot to talk about there. I mean, war and the battle for Pipelineistan happening in the Middle East, the U.S. and it looks like really NATO, the Western world, trying to figure out something finally to do with Syria and trying to get Putin on board. Maybe that's happened. Maybe he just knew that at some point they were going to be so committed. Or, the 4,000 sorties that they flew did blow up enough combatants that the Syrian Bashar al-Assad regime and, of course, the base in Tartus and another there in Syria are in safe working operation. Probably the key asset was the coastline and having those military bases in the the Black Sea, Mediterranean. I'd have to whip out the globe again, but So anyway, there is that. So before we get to all of the other things, the $78 trillion that pensions have added to the global government debt. And when you think about government debt, who pays the government and who does the government take money from? Pretty simple answer there. So let's just talk about Donald Trump. I know, he's the guy. Last weekend I went out with my mom and dad, and I just, jokingly talked about voting for Donald Trump, being the outsider, being the uninitiated, the unilluminated, the only dark horse candidate. Oh, my goodness. My mother was just beside herself. She literally told me that she had thought she had raised somebody better than a Donald Trump voter. So there has been shenanigans afoot galore. You have the George Soros many funded protest groups like Black Lives Matter going to Republican parties, speeches, and getting in fights and provocateuring Donald Trump. The mind control, if you saw the guy that jumped, how could you not if you're here in the U.S. watching this show, jumped the security and tried to attack Donald Trump. He said he wasn't going to attack Donald Trump. He was just going to take the microphone away from him. I'd play him here on the show, but I really don't want to go through all the clipping that would be required to listen to this guy. But he talks about how he thinks Donald Trump's a bully, using all these keywords. He's totally tuned into all of the political correctness stuff, and he goes on talking about how he's a bully, and he says these bold things. I paraphrase that he's saying these things, but he's really a coward, and that this guy he believes that he has to say this to the world, that obviously what he has to say, this young actor to the world, is so important that he has to go after Donald Trump. And from that point on, somebody brainwashed by the media, brainwashed by these attack campaigns, and the orchestration of the media against Donald Trump has been just overwhelming. So, anyway, I'm pretty entertained. I'll be honest with all of it. The fights, the paid for occupiers going to Trump's privately hosted events, and calling this guy a fascist and a racist and all of these just horrific things that may or may not be true. But on its face, talking about having an immigration policy, actually enforcing laws, this has been misconstrued as hate and evil, and the media has done a really good job at demonizing this man to the point where somebody who has, no blood on his hands. Donald Trump may have killed a few mobsters. He may know where, Hoffa's buried, but he is not a war criminal. He is not somebody who voted us into the 2003 reoccupation of Iraq. He's not somebody that owns a private mercenary firm. And people are so offended by this guy. And whether he has crummy, crappy wine, crappy products, whether he, made his money from, saying outlandish things on a TV show for entertainment value. So, the thing that just kind of blows me away is that people don't get it. And the Republicans really don't get it. Pretty illuminating. And it's not really that provocative. If you haven't heard this, this is one of the GOP elite talking about taking the Donald Trump presidential nominee Republican candidate away from him. And it's pretty funny here. This is Your Money, CNBC, talking with one of these insiders. And he drops this truth bomb that is really, really simple to understand.
Who will be voting on that first ballot. And, of course, once you go to the second ballot, if no one wins with 50%, which is really majority, 50% plus one, then it's all bets off.
Okay, I understand that these are the rules and that there's all kinds of crazy arcane rules that could be voted on between now and then. But, Curly, let me ask you, if Donald Trump heads into the nomination, maybe he's short of the 1237 required, if you give it to someone who has a much lesser percentage of the voters who have actually turned out for these primaries, don't you worry that you are going to just send chaos and anger into the Trump supporters and to the people who feel like their votes don't matter?
No, I don't think that's the case. If it would just be understood, we have a problem with the media. Unfortunately, the cable networks are trying to determine.
He says they really have a problem with the media. Now he starts giggling. He laughs.
I don't think this is a problem with the media. I've heard from a lot of voters who say if they feel like their votes got stolen, that they would be very unhappy and very angry. I think you're looking at a different situation. I realize these have been the rules, but the last time these rules were put in place was 1976. It's been a long time since then.
Yeah, they're still there. Yeah, that's a problem. The media has created the perception that the voters will decide the nomination, and that's the concept. That's the conflict here.
We feel like we live in a democratic society. What you're telling me is it's not a democratic society, and your votes don't necessarily matter because it's a democratic representation, correct?
No, that's not what I'm trying to tell you. What I'm trying to...
Yeah, what he's saying is that it's our party, okay? And if you want to be in the Republican Party, part of our party, one of our party rules is we pick the nominee. So all the primaries are valued to these parties because they want to win, because they want to, gain more seats in the House and the Senate, and in the presidential election, they'd like to have a president that is favorable to their corporate sponsors and corporate backers, but it's really a party. Donald Trump plans, we don't know what he plans, but I can tell you one thing. You have to be either a member of Skull and Bones, you have to do weird things at the Bohemian Grove. We talked about this last week. There's things that you have to do to become a Republican, to be the presidential candidate. And if you've noticed the coverage, I mean, there's absolutely no coverage on Ted Cruz. They talked about Marco Rubio over and over again. He got pretty desperate there at the end. That was pretty classy. You have all of these other non-players like Kasich that barely. Well, he won Ohio, his own state, but barely in the race. The media is in love with anybody but Donald Trump. So anyway, he skipped out on the last debate, and he's going to a real gala, a real place to hang out, and that, of course, is AIPAC 2016, the American-Israeli Public Affairs Commission. They are political backers. Now, interestingly enough, I always heard, and I've heard people talk about, AIPAC being this huge, powerful group, but when it comes to political candidates, they're willing to listen to anybody that will give them a chance, and they're taking Donald Trump. Bernie Sanders wanted to do AIPAC, and he was going to do it via video, but they didn't want that. That wasn't going to work for them. So, I guess Ted Cruz can talk to himself here at the next debate. AIPAC is pretty influential, but probably not as influential as they once were. There's a lot of other power brokers and groups out there. They do represent, the Zionist, philosophy. And when it comes to politics, they're all about paying for politicians to give Israel more money, protection, assurances, possibly classified information. So that's always interesting. Most people would say, you have to kiss the Wailing Wall. You have to go and kiss you have to kiss the ring of Judaism to get the Republican nomination. So I'm not sure if Hillary or any of the other Democrats will be going to that, but I know that Bernie was going to go to it. I don't really care. I know what they're going to say. Hillary Clinton, if she does go, will say exactly what she said to them, as she did the Wall Street bankers, the Goldman Sachs executives, that we're behind you. We understand that you're leveraged, blah, blah, blah. Give me $250,000 and I might not indict you. That's pretty blatant. She probably had Bill there passing around a briefcase for bribes, something like that. But anyway, so the criminality on the left and the complete destruction of the Republican Party trying to eat itself, and because of course these corporate sponsors and backers are very worried about Donald Trump and deciding to get rid of millions potentially of illegal immigrants, somehow taking them back to Mexico. Maybe a single-payer healthcare system. I mean, the Republicans really had to bend over and, work a deal to get that made. And then when it gets to, Senator Ted Cruz, I mean, he's one of the few people that is probably intelligent enough he's way more intelligent than anybody else in the room when it comes to law. This is a nation of laws. It's created, and if you're a lawmaker, you make laws that empower yourself and make profit. And that's what most people go to government to do. So, anyway, we have a multi-party system, but there are two big parties. They're gangs. You have the Republicans and you have the Democrats, and that is exactly what they are. So people keep voting within those two systems. I think that you absolutely should go out there and vote. That's one of the things that makes this country great, is that you do have a say. Yes, it may be stolen, but you don't have to vote for those parties. This guy right here, it's a media misconception. And she's saying, well, democracy's not alive in this country anymore if the people can't pick their candidate. You can't pick your Republican candidate. You can, but only if they meet the criteria that basically exclude people that they don't want. A lot of people were under this misconception, and I don't mean to laugh about it, but it's so in your face, it's so blatant, and it's not even that big of a deal, but people just don't get it. That is their party. They have crazy rules, all sorts of insane things to gerrymander and get their buddies into the right places. That is what it's all about. And then they have a huge organ of money, cash and capital, from industry, from billionaires, from every source of crony capitalism that you can find, and legitimate industry. There are companies out there that believe that they need to remind the government that they're alive, so the government doesn't write more and more laws to get rid of their honeypot. But I mean, that is the problem with a two-party system. When you only have Republicans and Democrats, I think that they've both shown us, especially with this 2016 election, it's been so just dirty and disgusting. But where were the libertarians? Did you hear one thing from a libertarian candidate? Absolutely not, because they don't have the financial funding to garner the media's attention. That's where all of the money goes, is right back into commercial advertising. And so the media is going to pick favorite candidates. They're going to pick the ones that are giving them the most money, quite obviously. All right, well, the race to the White House continues. I think we're done pretty much with the coverage. We'll move forward into some other topics, take your phone calls, and much more. It's Blacklisted Radio. Welcome back. Maybe a little more political talk. It's Blacklisted Radio right here on, multiple streams, but you can find us on the Republican Broadcasting Network, RBN. I think it's live.org. Used to be. No, it's republicbroadcasting.org. All right. Interestingly enough, when you talk about the party system, I think it was a huge wake-up call for a lot of the original Tea Party local activists when talking with Ron Paul and asking him after election why he had voted for some senators and had basically given his approval and seal to several not so good guys in Texas, some of these Congress critters that had, pretty bad records and had been working with Monsanto. I don't remember all the details, but some guys that weren't actually libertarian, liberty activist minded people running for Congress. And they asked Ron Paul, and they're like, "Well, Ron, why didn't you, endorse A, B, or C? Why did you endorse this guy?" And he's like, "Well, that's what the party, demands. You have to do what the party says to do when you're part of the party." So, there's always those concerns. Like Chris Christie, when he endorsed Donald Trump, he was basically giving a big FU to the establishment Republican Party, and all of those quote unquote GOP leaders are they know where their bread's buttered, and these guys are meeting with tech media, 40 plus private jets, meeting on a secret island, almost very Jekyll Island-esque with the secrecy, the private meeting with, the head of Reddit. We're talking about people like George Soros throwing millions, if not more, into this anti-Trump campaign. Now the new meme is, I'm going to hold my nose and vote for Hillary. This, doesn't shock me. She really is a war hawk. She seems on every level to be more Republican than really anyone that's running in the race. When I think of the new neoconservative Republican, unabashed warmonger, somebody who subsidizes themselves with big oil, big money. She just gave a big speech about to coal investors about coal is going to be here for a long, long time. It just goes on. This lady will say anything to anyone and has no soul. She may be the 2016 candidate. Seems that's probably it. Or a nice old socialist guy named Bernie Sanders. Probably not. But, I think that was a wake-up call for myself, looking at partisan politics and looking at how, both parties are pretty scummy. They are not without ties. When you put on the donkey coat or the elephant coat, you become one of them and bound by all the things that they have done. You now are part of a system to bring money in through all of its machinations. So, and Ron Paul was honest about it. Hey, got to vote with the party. Got to vote with the party. That's how it works. So, when you think about Obama or George W. Bush, think about all the things that they really represent and all the people that have got them there. You're not just some one-term senator that pops out of nowhere and becomes the president of the United States. Just doesn't happen. You have to be vetted, and you have to be, you have to be a party insider and somebody that is very powerful or somebody that's very controlled. So I think that's what we have the latter with Barack Obama. But the new meme, hold your nose and vote for Hillary. Is it because it stinks? Or is it because it might be sarin gas? I don't know. All right, quick break. We'll be back with more. You can be part of it. 800-313-9443. It's Blacklisted Radio. So anyway, welcome back. It's Blacklisted Radio. Yeah, so just looking right now, I was going to bring this up, but we had another huge drone strike, killed over 50 people actually, I think that's a pretty conservative estimate. Anyway, I was reading through this piece, and it was on the Independent, and the reason that they targeted these terrorists was because they played a strategic or had a strategic threat against AFRICOM and their mission. And so you start looking at the broad definition of what assassination is being justified for and by. And I just think about the lack of coverage, number one. The fact that I can't find the article I was talking about is nothing less than frustrating. But, why even bother? While I look for that, we should talk about real news, and that is what's happening in the world. We have Jean-Claude Van Damme talking about the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, these banking families. Really, with the Rockefellers, more of a oil baron family, and how they have controlled the West and the world for many, many years. They were very, very influential, and of course, I'm just interpreting this. I would play it for you, but it wasn't on U.S. TV, so it doesn't have that U.S. global impact that it might have if it was. But I think it's interesting nonetheless. Hollywood coming out there and talking about the Rothschilds. Actually, Eleanor, the guy, one of the relatives of course, the famous Rothschilds before him, Amsel Rothschild. He's apparently in some trouble. Saw some different headlines, but I couldn't really source anything definitive. But it looks like an indictment, an inquiry into one of their business relationships. And when you're talking about the Rothschilds, I mean, they have a hedge fund that they manage worth over $23 billion. A lot of money, but probably not as much as people would think right now, because $23 billion, it'll buy you a lot of stuff. I mean, it's put in perspective, it's 23,000 million, and that's a lot of cash, but it's not a huge, unfathomable amount of money, like it may have been. And as far as influence in industry and in education, like the Rockefellers were, especially in the 20th century, well noted, very, very instrumental, especially Nelson Rockefeller. Saw a nugget about him, actually. The NSA archive released a trove of documents, and his role in covering up and working directly with Dick Cheney in scrubbing documentation during the Church Committee. Of course, when they were investigating the CIA during this time, that's when Henry Kissinger and the Safari Boys took all of the private funding, or really the public funding, and made private ventures in lieu of the CIA while Congress was investigating all of their shenanigans and assassinations and the like. Now that they have pretty much declassified most of these, I just thought it was really interesting to see that relationship with him, Gerald Ford, Dick Cheney. You start looking at these guys, these criminals, and they've been around for a long, long time. Dick Cheney having his hands on literally wiping the names of people involved with assassinations, CIA and other, paid for, White House supported shenanigans. But nonetheless, so my point being that the Rockefellers were very instrumental. Rothschilds, of course, during the 1800s, slightly before that, especially during the failure of the Bank of England, were in key positions to, since Napoleonic times, they were very influential. Today, I don't know if they control the world like some people say they do, but very influential and probably above the law. And when you talk about the oligarchy, I saw a great piece today pinned about Hillary Clinton, and that if we don't see an indictment, that the Republic is already lost. We live under an oligarchy. And I'm just thinking, well, that's just one of many knives in the back of the American public. But, Bill went golfing with Obama a week before last, and I'm sure you know how that conversation went. I don't know what you think you got on Hillary, but we've been around for a long time, and we got some stuff on you, Obama. That's right. We will F you up. We'll send out a hitman. We will get the CIA to whack you if you go after Hillary. Something like that. I know, I got a pretty bad. I guess it sounds more like this. That's a better Clinton. I should have worked on it before bringing it to the show, but nonetheless, the criminality, it continues, and I'm scared to death of what Hillary Clinton, will bring in. Of course, our new First Lady, Bill, all of his indiscretions, probably will be able to get his good buddy Jeffrey Epstein, the pedophile billionaire, out of prison. He'll be able to exonerate him. I don't know, but anyway, it is interesting when you see people going out there on a limb and talking about these things, because people don't understand why we have the certain mechanisms that we have today. Nelson Rockefeller, hugely influential in bringing us the 12th grade system and teaching, as he once was quoted saying, a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And you could, say that's evil or bad or good. I would say it's probably closer to evil, but from an industrialist perspective, wanting to build an industrialist nation and have a way to do that, and have a way to groom people that were dedicated and nationalistic, that would be willing to fight in wars to come. Well, that's exactly what they did, and that's exactly what he was influentially part of. So there is that. I did want to talk, let's see, I had some other topics, of course, about, the $78 trillion pension problem. When we talk about debt, we talk about, liabilities and what it will take to pay off the financialization of everything. And by that I mean that everything is some kind of leveraged bet. Basically, life for everyone has become a leveraged debt. And at some point, you're going to have, especially with lifespans being longer, you have less and less people putting into these systems, and they have become $78 trillion worth of potential payouts to people that are retired. And there's plenty of big pension systems that are out there that still exist today. For most of the people entering the job market today, you probably will never see a pension. You may be able to invest in some other kind of money-making or losing scheme like a 401k or a Roth IRA or another financial, somewhat of a safe haven, but really kind of a gotcha thing. It might pay off a little bit better than the market. It might be a nice rainy day fund if you plan on working most of your life. I think that's becoming more and more of a reality for most people. or becoming, basically functionally poor, living on, Social Security and some of these other, not entitlements, but forced systems that we have to invest in as Americans. I'm mixed on it. I see how many people just don't, plan ahead and save a nut. I understand why those systems are out there, because people, regardless of what they know is ahead, logic does not always enter into people's plans, and people I know that are great people that I know very well aren't able to save a penny. And not that they couldn't. It's just it's pocket to mouth, and that's the way it is for a lot of people. So when it comes to Social Security, I mean, I understand why it is a lifeline, and in my mind, if you look at the social benefit, which is very, very limited, it might be worth the investment, but the return is really bad. Anyway, $78 trillion. This is a huge problem, and I don't think we'll see a huge explosion in these pension systems, but what we are going to see is the U.S. government having to absorb in more of a nationalized system, more big government systems to rational or to ration capital, to ration cash to those out there, just like healthcare is now being rationed. It's funny enough, people thought that Sarah Palin was crazy, that they would never ration your healthcare. Believe you me, they absolutely would. So there is that. When you look at the amount of unfunded liabilities and leverage, that is on some of these debts, you realize that there's no way that we could pay those back. Those will never make good. The question is, who's the losers? Usually bondholders are saved, but taxpayers are not, because government can print cash quickly. But, I mean, you really get this, picture when you hear $70 trillion. To save the economy, if you just think back to Hank Paulson in 2008, seems like a long time ago. I mean, it's 8 years ago. And I was livid that the Wall Street bankers were being bailed out one more time, that this was a calculated explosion at Lehman Brothers. It was absolutely every bit of it inside job. And I remember his assistant. She wasn't bad looking. She was actually assistant at the Treasury, but they came out and they finally said, well, why did you choose $750 billion after she was grilled by Congress? And she said, well, it seemed like a big enough number. And if you think about this, $750 billion, that doesn't seem like that much money today when you start hearing, we just add another $1 trillion to the debt. And to the deficit, and which is the debt to, of course, the Federal Reserve, which is now moving huge portions of, the economy, and we actually have a completely controlled economy where the Federal Reserve is buying stocks. Okay, they're buying stocks off of interest that they have accrued from lending money to the U.S. government. Talk about a good gig. Talk about a buffering system that really, I mean, it buffers the U.S. from direct debt. It turns it into a corporate debt, the corporatization of the U.S. You have incorporated counties, incorporated cities. So the corporate liability is on the Federal Reserve. But what liability is that? Because, of course, the U.S. government can just print money. they can borrow and print it from the Treasury. In any kind of coin they'd like. They could make $1 trillion coin. I remember that. That was the plan to get rid of the debt. Why don't we just print up $1 trillion coins? And, even if you're one of those people that was really for that, I mean, when you're at the point where your economic solution to these massive unpayable liabilities is to create a coin, you're at the bottom of the barrel of ideas and ways to fix the economy. Can you fix the economy? Time has proven that you cannot. That at some point you reach debt saturation. You have the consolidation of too much wealth in the hands of too few. And no, I'm not a socialist, and I'm not for taking money from people and giving it to others. Taking from the poor and giving it to the rich. That's how socialism, that's how communism works. Your pecking order for all the people out there that want more of that want free government school. What do you think you're going to get? The same government you protest that you think is run by racists and evil white people and the rest of the things that you're being taught by the television. I mean, I saw this, I guess it was a joke. It was like a meme thing that was going around, and so, vote Bernie Sanders 2016. Where's my free S? Where's my stuff? Where's my goodies? I pay taxes. I should get something. And I can agree with that sentiment. Why am I paying for health care when the government mandates it through the... Well, yeah, I mean, why are you paying for health care if the government's mandating it and working in concert with health companies to determine what is health care, what procedures, what policies are adopted, which insurance companies are legitimate, licensing, regulating every aspect of that. And the last thing that they have to do is provide a product at a price that is reasonable. That's pretty easy. And the government forces you to buy it. Well, that's how they're going to pay off the $78 trillion. If it is to be done, they're going to force you to pay it off some form or fashion. Quick break, and we'll roll into the final segment. It's Blacklisted Radio. Stay tuned. Yeah. All right, welcome back. It's the final segment of Blacklisted Radio. I want to mention that this show is funded by you out there. You, the listener, the producer of the program, exclusively. That's why your interest in the topics, your best interest, your heart's the absolute truth is that to provide for you because you're listening to the show. And, of course, you support it. So a big shout out to a $100 donor from Lila and Ivana. Says, hi, Doug. A donation from across the pond. Thanks for your great radio shows. Thank you. Could you please mention the Kickstarter campaign for NewsBud, an alternative independent media source with Pepe Escobar, Sybil Edmonds, and many more investigative journalists? So there you go. I just did. And, I was actually looking at that Kickstarter, and that is the way I think you have to try to fund a completely corporate-free structure but at the same time, it's just not that profitable. But I love these ideas. I like Kickstarter plans. People have suggested, doing that for the show, and the only thing that I could bring more to it is more time and more interviews, content like that. And really, that just requires time for me. Quite honestly, I would never want to live off of just trying to do a show and getting enough people to invest in it, because I would have to be a really good radio personality. I'd have to sell a lot of supplements and other things like that. And that's just, I'm not really into that. I find that there's better ways to spend time, and there's nothing wrong with that, but that's why we do it that way. So I want to thank Lila and Ivana. So if you'd like to share your support, you can do that at blacklistedradio.com, or take some of the other tools there, share them with your friends and family and other people that you think would be interested in the content of the show. So Obama's going to Cuba. I get this all the time. Shameless plug, but I own a cigar brand called La Verdad, which is the truth. If you go to the website, laverdadcigars.com, you can check out our offering there, which is a really nice Habano Dominican cigar called Serafines, which is an archangel. People ask me all the time, what do you think about the Cuban cigars? When are you going to be able to get those? Obama's going over there. And so quite quickly, I'll tell you the big thing about Cuban cigars. They are really good. Some of the best Cuban cigars are some of the best cigars in the world, but there are plenty of cigars that far, far exceed the quality, taste, and profile of a Cuban cigar that are made in Nicaragua, that are made in the Dominican Republic, and even some that are coming out of Honduras and other places. Not to mention all of them, but Peru. It has great tobacco. So there's plenty of great places to find cigars. So most of it's the novelty, because we're not allowed to have it. The fact that we have to go out of our way. And so just like my 2-year-old son, if you're told you can't have it, sometimes it makes you want it just a little bit more. All right, guys. That's how I feel about freedom. All right. We'll be back next week. I promise. Cross my heart. For another live edition of Blacklisted Radio. I hope you will be as well. And until then, take care.